Bharti, we can get started.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bharti from GST Zen, and today we'll be discussing about e-invoicing that is going to start from 1st of October for businesses whose turnover has exceeded 10 crores. Just a moment. Okay, sharing my screen. Okay, so in this e-invoicing webinar, we'll be covering the basics and API and Excel integrations with e-invoicing. To go into more detail, so the basics of e-invoice, what is e-invoice, and what are the legal provisions, how to create an account with NIC, integration with Excel and APIs for the purpose of generating an e-invoice and validating them. Okay, before moving on to e-invoicing, let me start by telling you a little bit about GST Zen. We got started in 2017 mainly as a compliance software, and since then we have also delved into e-invoicing. Besides e-invoicing, we provide many services such as return filing, reconciliation reports, and other tools. So under return filing, we provide filing of 1 GSTR 3B, 9 and 9C. We provide books versus GSTR 2A or 2B, a consolidated report wherein a comparison between GSTR 1, 2A and 3B is done. We provide PAN level reports as well as e-waybill reports. And some tools available to our users are autopilot, wherein the user can perform multiple functions, a single function for multiple GST numbers at a time. We provide JSON to Excel tool, and we provide validators to validate GST numbers and HSN. Let's look at some of our numbers. We have more than 30,000 users. Lakhs of reports have been downloaded from our servers. Millions of invoices are processed daily, and we have more than 20 crore invoices in our database. So why e-invoicing? So you should not consider e-invoicing as a burden, and rather think of it as moving towards a digital economy. So by implementing e-invoicing, India's ranking in ease of doing business has moved up from 77 to 63 because we have gone digital, and it brings in more transparency. So businesses have also observed that e-invoicing has reduced their cost by 96%, saved 80% of their time, and made the process 15 times more efficient. It also has helped them in simplifying audits because you have a record of all the invoices you generate. It makes auditing process easier. So what is e-invoice or electric invoicing? There is no prior standard under GST or any other statute for e-invoicing. How is it different from digital invoicing? So most of the days nowadays, most of the people are using one or the other form of an ERP, accounting software, where you can give a soft copy of the invoice, but everybody who's generating the invoice have their own format. There is no uniformity. Now due to e-invoice, all the e-invoices generated, the invoices reported to the government will be in the same manner. So it provides for interoperability between various players. So whatever you generate goes into GSTR1, and then it goes into your GSTR 2A or 2B of your customer. It also goes to e-waybill. So there is interoperability due to e-invoicing. Okay, so let's look at this picture. This helps us in seeing the importance of e-invoicing. So let's say I am in India and I'm using type D. as for my adapter of my laptop. Okay, so I'm getting I'm charging my laptop with an adapter which is compatible with type D. So if I move to another country which has type A or type B, I won't be able to plug in my adapter to charge the laptop. It is the same way. If I generate an invoice from SAP, that I might not be able to copy it to Tally. So that is how it means. Even though the data remains the same, the format of getting or producing the data is different from each ERP. Now, due to e-invoicing, this interoperability would be possible. Let's look at the progress of e-invoicing in India. So e-invoicing is not new. The first batch was implemented on 1st of October 2020, wherein businesses above 500 crore were mandated to generate e-invoices. And since then, in various stages, the government has reduced this threshold. On 1st Jan 2021, the threshold was 100 crores and above. On 1st April 21, it went down to 50, then 20 crore, and now from 1st of October, it's 10 crore or above. Okay, so this is basically saying that you should not wait until the last moment to implement your e-invoicing process. Let's look at the legal provisions now. Who is required to issue e-invoices? So the government has issued various notifications in this regard. The first notification was 61/2020, where the taxpayer with aggregate turnover in a financial year above 500 crore were enabled from 1st of October 2022. Similarly, Central Notification 17/2022 notifies taxpayer with aggregate turnover in a financial year above 10 crore to start generating e-invoices from 1st of October 2022. Let's look at some of the relevant notifications and rules. So e-invoicing was notified by Central Tax Notification 68/2019. So under Rule 48 gives the manner of issuing e-invoice. So the e-invoice issued should be in the form GST INV1. It provides for a specific format that should be followed by issuing the invoice. And the invoice which is not uh, does not follow the manner given in form GST INV1 is not considered a valid invoice as per Rule 45, Subrule 5. Rule 48, Subrule 6 provides that multiple copies are not required when you're generating the e-invoice. Rule 48 Subrule 1 says that you should generate multiple copies, one for you, one for your supplier, one for your customer and one for your transporter. Now that you're generating e-invoice, those duplicate copies are not required. Rule 48 tells about the content of the invoice, and Rule 46 tells about the content of the invoice, and Rule 48 tells about the manner of issuing invoice. Moving on, CGST notification 69/2019 notified a common portal, that is einvoice1.gst.gov.in, where all of you must have already created accounts since it is the e-invoicing is applicable from 1st of October. And notification 60/2020 specified the schema. So schema is basically the fields which are used for generating the e-invoice, fields which are wherein you provide the information in which in the manner the government has provided. Now, which persons are exempted? A special economic zone unit is exempted from generating e-invoices, and the persons covered by Rule 54 are also exempted, which include insurance or a banking company or a financial institution, including NBFC goods, transport agency, passenger transportation, and admission to films in multiplex screens. Which transactions are covered by E-invoicing rules. Now this is very important. Please pay attention. So all these document and type of transaction highlighted in green are eligible for e-invoicing. The ones highlighted in red are not eligible. So for all taxable supplies, invoices generated for taxable supplies are covered under e-invoicing. So if you are generating an invoice, you have to create e-invoice and the credit note and debit notes based on that you have to in relation to that have are also covered under e-invoicing. So all taxable invoices invoices, credit notes and debit notes relating to taxable supplies are covered under e-invoicing, and non-taxable supplies such as your bill of supply and delivery challan and ISD invoice, for these types you will not be creating an e-invoice. Now looking at the type of transaction, you generate e-invoice when you are supplying to a registered person, that is a B2B invoice. Also when you are supplying to the government and export of goods and services. If you are supplying to an unregistered party, that is a B2C bill, a B2C bill is not covered for e-invoicing. Similarly, purchase from URD and import of goods and services. So, to sum up, taxable supplies to businesses, registered persons, government, and exports are eligible for e-invoicing. Non-taxable supplies and supplies made to unregistered persons, that is B2B domestic supplies, purchase from URD, and import of goods and services are not covered under e-invoicing. Now registration. So whoever is will be creating e-invoices have to get themselves registered on the live portal, that is einvoice1.gst.gov.in. Government has also provided a sandbox where you can test. So before moving on to the production, you might want to find out how to generate e-invoices, what errors could be there, and how to correct them. So if you want to test your data beforehand, you can register yourself on Sandbox and do your testing. So the government has also provided a trial portal for turnover above 100 crores. Some other important links are here. GSTINs generating IRN. So the portal provides a list of all the GST numbers which are generating e-invoices. So you can check whether your supplier is generating e-invoice, and if he is, he should provide you an e-invoice and not just an invoice without IRN. Similarly, you can check whether your GST number is enabled for e-invoicing. You can use the government tool. Government provides an offline utility for generating e-invoice that can be used directly from the portal. It also provides an app to verify uh, an e-invoice by scanning the QR code. And you can also verify the signed invoice using the JSON. It is basically the acknowledgement JSON, the response the portal gives when you are generating the e-invoice. Let's look at the process. So this is how it works. The seller, basically the registered person who's selling the goods and generating the e-invoice, sends the information directly through offline utility or an ERP account system, whichever is connected to the portal. So through various registrars, the IRP validates the data, checks for duplication. Checking for duplication is essentially whether you have generated an e-invoice against that document earlier. If you have already generated it, it will give you an error that this is a duplicate and will not generate a new IRN. And if all the details are valid, IRN is generated and the response is sent back to the IRP or whichever accounting system you're using. So it gives back the digitally signed invoice and the QR code, which can be used for verifying the e-invoice. After creation of e-invoice, after 2 to 3 days, it gets populated in GSTR1. From there, it is populated in GSTR 2A and 2B of your customer. And if e-way bill is generated, it also gets sent to the e-way bill portal. Okay, now let's look at it as a process. So the supplier generates, who's trying to generate an e-invoice, sends the information into the GST system. It is validated by various registrars. After validating and checking for duplicacy, uh, e-invoice generated is sent to GSTN and e-way bill portal if e-way bill is generated simultaneously. From there, it goes to GSTR1, recipients GSTR2A and 2B, and any other interested parties. So it also helps in transposting through API, and it also gets posted in your books. Now, terms and definitions. These are some important terms. So, invoice reference number. What is IRN? It combines the taxpayer GST number, financial year, document type, and invoice number. So by combining these four details of an invoice, it gives you a 64-digit alphanumeric number to uniquely identify an invoice. So this is an IRN generated based on the combination of this GST number, financial year, document type, and this document number. By combining these four details, this IRN is generated. This is only for computers. There is no way for humans to read this and decodify. Okay, so it is just a unique number allotted to an invoice based on the combination of taxpayer GST number, financial year, document type, and invoice number. Next important definition is invoice registration portal, that is IRP. So any e-invoice that you're trying to generate, the information goes to IRP. So you send the information in the form of JSON to IRP. From there, it will give you back the response as signed invoice and QR code. From there, it goes to the GST portal as well as e-way bill portal. Invoice register. It is authorized by the government. It is the first IRP. First IRP is run by NIC, and second IRP is proposed to be run by the GSTN. It verifies and acknowledges e-invoices, replies within the blink of an eye. It will retain the invoices for 24 hours. So during this window, this 24 hours, you can cancel the e-invoice, beyond which you will not be able to, and it will not give you the information. It only holds the information for 24 hours, after which you won't be able to retrieve it. Okay. So this is the response from IRP. So we were talking about the response given by IRP for an e-invoice. It provides an acknowledgement date, that is the date and time at which e-invoice is generated, the acknowledgement number, IRN, the signed invoice, QR code, and the status of the e-invoice. It is saying active, and if you cancel, it will say CA and cancel. And if you are generating the e-way bill details simultaneously, the e-way bill details also come as part of the response. This is what the PDF copy of an e-invoice looks like. So this is the QR code. You have IRN, acknowledgement number, and date here. So now let's talk about signed QR code. So if you scan the QR code, it will say that this is digitally signed by NIC. It contains high-level parameters of an invoice and can be used to know the authenticity of an invoice. Once you scan the QR code, you get many details. Basically, the important details of the invoice, like the buyer GST number, document number, date, IRN, item count, HSN code, seller GST number, and total invoice value. It will not give you all the details of the invoice, but the main details by scanning the QR code. How GST then integration works. Okay, so let's talk about that. See, we provide various TDLs. Let's say you are creating e-invoices from Tally. We install a TDL. So using that TDL, the information is sent in the form of a JSON to GST Zen Cloud, where we perform a set of checks and validations. After performing those validations, we send the information to IRP, get the response back. If e-invoice is generated, we get the QR code and IRN, and it gets stored back to the ERP. Let's take a look at some of the frequently asked questions. We'll be taking the questions in regards to change in books versus change in IRP portal, change in IRP portal to change in GSTR1 and e-Webel, and e-Webel active, e-invoice cancelled. So we'll be taking up all these questions. So the first one is, at what time is the e-invoice required for a particular transaction? If the invoice is for movement of goods, you should generate the e-invoice before commencing movement. So when you're generating the e-way bill, you actually generate the e-way bill before sending out the goods. So in the same manner, you have to generate the e-invoice as well before moving the goods. So if you are selling the goods across the counter, it has to be generated before completing the sales, and invoice for services before issuing the services, before issuing it to the customer, before issuing the invoice to the customer. How do e-Webel works? E-Webels work. E-Webels are governed by Rule 138 of CGST rules. As we had spoken about, e-Webel can be generated simultaneously with IRN, or it can be generated later on as well by using the IRN of the e-invoice. IRP supports e-Webel only for an invoice. If you are generating a credit note or debit note e-invoice, you will not be if you are generating a credit note or a debit note, it will not allow you to generate the e-way bill against that IRN. E-way bill is only possible for an e-invoice in case of an invoice, not in the case of a credit note or debit note. If cancelled, so you have to cancel e-way bill first and then cancel the e-invoice. You cannot cancel the e-invoice first and then cancel e-way bill. The e-way bill has to be cancelled first. How to print the e-invoice? You should print it with IRN and QR code. And QR code in a digital display is sufficient during transport. You need not have a hard copy of it. How to send e-invoice to the recipient? IRP will not send it for you. You have to send it through email. Okay, you can email the acknowledgement JSON with PDF so that they can verify the e-invoice. Using that acknowledgement JSON, it can be verified that this is a genuine e-invoice. The government is building a system to send the e-invoice directly to the recipient. The system is not available as of yet. In GST Zen, we provide the facility of emailing the invoice PDF to the recipient directly. So what details of the e-invoice should we save in our ERP? You should save the acknowledgement number and date, and save the invoice and QR code digitally signed by IRP. Until what time can I register an e-invoice? Okay. So anytime before issuing the invoice, okay, sometimes you're not able to generate the e-invoice simultaneously. Okay, it is recommended that you generate the e-invoice on the date of the invoice itself, but you can generate it within 48 hours, recommended to be generated within 48 hours. to comply with the GST Act. So to comply with Section 31. Example, if you're generating an invoice for March 5, 2020, it should be generated before 7th March, 12 p.m. Okay, so it is recommended that you generate within 48 hours. Okay, and not after that. Although the portal allows backdated e-invoice, I can also generate an e-invoice for an invoice dated 10 days ago. That does not mean that you should do it. It is recommended you generate within 48 hours. Can e-invoice be cancelled? Yes, the e-invoice can be cancelled within 24 hours of creation, but not after that. Can e-invoice be modified? No. Once you generate an e-invoice, you cannot change any details of the invoice. If you have generated and you want to change the details, the only option is to cancel it. So you cancel and you create a new invoice and generate the e-invoice against that. Also, you will not be able to use the same invoice number again. So you will have to use another invoice number if you're changing the details and creating a new e-invoice. Okay, if you're not able to cancel it within 24 hours, what should you do? You can cancel it in your books of accounts and not report it in your GSTR1 while filing the return. Common errors and how to avoid them. So in case of you're getting an error of invalid HSN code, you can use GSTZen's validator to check the HSN code. You can also check on the GST portal if the PIN code does not match the state. So the e-invoice portal provides a list of PIN codes for a state. You can check the PIN code against that. Recipient GSTN is cancelled. Okay, so you should check the status of the recipient GST number, because if it is cancelled or inactive, B2B invoice is not applicable. If B2B invoice is not applicable, you cannot generate the e-invoice. If you have inconsistent amounts, it is recommended that you use a proper software to avoid human errors. You should also make sure that you are giving the correct transaction type. If you are supplying to an SEZ, you cannot mark the invoice as regular. Regular means B2B. If you are supplying to SEZ, you should mention that this is an SEZ supply. If you are exporting, you should mention, you should give the transaction type as export. Okay. E-invoice technical aspects. How to prepare an e-invoice as per schema and communicate with IRP, send e-invoice to customer, and receive e-invoice from suppliers. So as we have already discussed this. So you send the data from your ERP accounting software. The details come into GSTZen. They are validated and then sent to the IRP. From there, they receive the IRN, digital signature, and QR code that is stored back in the accounting software, and the PDF email gets sent to the recipient from GSTZen automatically. This is the e-invoice schema. So we have various sections. You have some mandatory details and some optional details. So if you look at this image, so these sections in this image are mandatory details. So you have to provide the seller details, the buyer details, document details such as your date, invoice number, etc., your line item details, and the total amounts. So these are the mandatory details. Now, if you look at the details in blue, that is the dispatch address, the export details, plus optional details of payment terms, reference, and shipping address. All of these are optional details. You can choose to provide this information, but without these information, also your e-invoice will get generated. If you look at the total number of fields in the schema, mandatory sections are 28, optional 45. Okay, and the total are your 133 sections. Sections that can repeat. Okay. So you have these, again, this table is showing the mandatory and optional sections. There's no need to go into detail of these. Okay, now let's look at what GST Zen is offering. GST Zen provides various solutions. We have Excel, their direct database connector, and custom-made solutions for some ERPs. So under Excel, we have two methods, secured folder and drag and drop. In secured folder, the file comes through a secured folder to our servers. The e-invoices get generated and the information is sent back to that folder. In drag and drop, you upload the file manually, your Excel file manually, and the e-invoice gets generated. In direct database access, the e-invoice can be generated directly from your database. We provide GST Zen APIs for connecting, for integrating your ERP with GST Zen, and we have ready-made solutions for Tally and SAP. Now my colleague Srivatsa will take over and show you a demo of our solutions. Shiva, please take over.
Sure. Thank you, Bharti. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Srivatsa. Bharti, are you able to see my screen? Hello, Bharti. Manisha, is my screen visible?
Srivatsa is visible.
Okay, great. So I'm going to be demonstrating a demo of how e-invoices can be generated through GST Zen through mainly three methods. One is our Excel template. Secondly, we have through API, which is especially helpful if e-invoices need to be generated from custom ERPs. And thirdly, through GST Zen's billing software, where you can directly create an invoice by entering all the details, and then after that you can create an e-invoice. So first we are going to look at the Excel method. So what you're seeing right now is the GST Zen dashboard. As Bharti has mentioned, we are a SaaS platform on my.gstzen.in. When you create a new account and you log in, this is the screen that you will be seeing. We will display a list of all the GST numbers that you have added, and if at all you want to add a new GST number, you can click this button and enter the details. It will get added to your account. So this is a multi-user account. You can provide permissions for different users to access different GST numbers. So moving to the demo itself, I will be doing the e-invoicing demo for this GST number. So I will click on it and it will take us to the detailed page of this GST number. So here on the left, you will see some options called download a report, reconcile books versus government portal data, and file GST returns. So we do provide GSTR 1, 3B, 9, 9C return filing and purchase data versus 2A, 2B reconciliation. So that is a part of the GST software. So for e-invoicing, you will see that there is a button here. And when you click that, we will have multiple options to generate any invoice. What you see here is GST Zen Excel, which is a macro-based method. Then we also have integrations through Tally and SAP. And then you see something called as your Excel, which I will get to a bit later in the demo. Now we will be looking at GST Zen Excel full. Before I speak about that, I will talk about the upload JSON. So this is very helpful for software developers. If you have the e-invoice JSON ready, all you have to do is upload it here and an e-invoice will get generated. So this again, I will show when I'm showing the API demo. So now coming back to the GST Zen Excel full. This is GST Zen's Excel template, as the name suggests. It is very similar to the government portal's Excel utility. We have a standard template. You fill in the data into that template and you upload it back to GST Zen. and we will generate e-invoices in bulk. So now we are going to take a look at the template itself. I download the template and I open it. And the first thing you will see is the about sheet. Now there are 3 sheets: about, sales invoices, and master data. The about sheet and master data sheet are purely for reference. You do not have to enter any data into these sheets. If at all you have any questions regarding a field belonging to the e-invoice schema, you can refer to the sheet and we will give you information such as whether it is mandatory or optional, what are some of the example values, and so on. So like I said again, about and master data is only for reference. In the sales invoices sheet, you will be entering the data. And here you will see that some of the columns belong to a certain color, whereas others belong to a different color. So this is purely because the different colors are for the different sections of the e-invoice schema. The first section is the document details section, where we have the document type, the document date, and document number as mandatory. Whatever is in bold is a mandatory column, and without providing this mandatory information, e-invoices cannot be generated. Hence, you have to provide values for all the columns that are in bold. We spoke about the document details section. Then we have the supplier details here, where the supplier GST number, legal name, address, line 1, city, and the PIN code. These 5 fields are mandatory. Same with recipient. The same set of 5 fields are mandatory again for the recipient details. Then moving on, we have the ship to and dispatch details, which are mandatory. Not every invoice needs the ship to and dispatch details. If it is applicable, you can enter the details. And then towards the end, we have the item level details, such as the HSN code, product description, UQC, taxable value, GST rate, and the tax amounts. So these values need to be entered. And if I scroll further right, you will see that we have certain additional fields here, like if there are any other charges for the item, and if there are any other charges for the invoice as a whole, you can enter those values here. We also support TCS amount, invoice level discount, round off amount, and foreign currency code, and total in foreign currency, which is especially for export invoices. If at all you want to enter the foreign currency code and total in foreign currency, that can be entered here. Customer purchase order number and date also we support, and you can enter. So this is what the template looks like. Now I have a pre-filled Excel belonging to the same template. I have some data here. As you can see, the document number 126 is repeated. That is because this is an invoice that has 2 line items. I'm going to show how we support multiple line items in GST Zen's Excel method. Then I have 5 invoices that have a single line item. The document type is INV for an invoice. For a credit note, it will be CRN, and for a debit note, it will be DBN. I have also entered the transaction type because if at all you leave it blank, we will consider it as B2B. If it is an export invoice or an SEZ invoice, you have to make sure that you enter the correct transaction type. Place of supply is also optional, but we have entered the value in this case. You will see that I have entered the mandatory fields for the supplier and the recipient sections. And moving on, since ship to and dispatch are empty, are optional, I have left these fields blank, and I have entered the item level details. I've entered the HSN code, description, UQC, quantity is optional, but you can provide. Unit price is also optional. If you provide it, we will consider it. Taxable value, GST rate, and the GST amount. So once I have added all the data, I can simply save the file, and then I can upload it into GST Zen. I select the file and say upload your Excel, and we will show you 3 tabs basically. One is the summary tab, one is the errors tab, and one is the invoices tab. So first we will look at the summary tab. Here we will tell you what is the number of documents that you have uploaded into GST Zen. So in my Excel, I had 5 invoices, and hence the number that you see here is 5. We will also show the sum of taxable amounts for these invoices. some of the tax amounts, that is your CGST, SGST, and IGST amounts. And then we will also show the document date range between which these invoices exist, so that you know for which day you are uploading these invoices. So this is about the summary tab. It is useful for you to tally whether the amounts are matching with your Excel and what we are displaying here. Now we have the errors tab. So this is a classic example of how we are trying to upload an e-invoice for an invoice. I mean, e-invoice has already been generated for this invoice and we are uploading it again. Hence, GST is giving an error saying that while processing the invoice number, this is the error that has been encountered. E-invoice already generated. So we will not consider this invoice for upload. We will show the remaining invoices in the last tab, which is a more descriptive summary of the first tab. Here you will be able to see the GST number of the customer name, what is the invoice number, the invoice date, the taxable value, and also the GST amounts. So this is the first step of upload. You have uploaded the invoices to GST Zen, and the color is yellow, which means e-invoice is not yet created. Before uploading it to the portal, we will take a look at the PDF. You will see that the PDF does not have an IRN and a QR code. That is simply because this is a tax invoice. It has not yet become an e-invoice. So after verifying that the details that you have entered is correct, you can come back here and say upload. And when you say yes, upload e-invoices, you will notice that that you get a message towards the top left of your screen that says generated IRN. So for these invoices, IRN has been generated. Now I will open the PDF again, and you will see that there is an IRN number on top, and we also have the acknowledgement details here, along with the QR code. When you scan this QR code from the government portal, from the government portal's app, you will be able to get the invoice details. So now this is considered as an e-invoice because it has an IRN and a QR code. Coming back, you will see all the invoices have turned to green, which means e-invoice has been created. So this is how an e-invoice can be generated in bulk using GSTZen's Excel utility. So if we want more information about the invoice, we just have to click the invoice number, and we will show a more descriptive screen of the invoice. Basically, we will show what is who is the supplier, who is the buyer, who is the consignee, what are the line items belonging to the invoice, and so on. This is the detailed page of the invoice, where we also provide an option to generate the e-way bill and cancel the e-invoice. So what I'm going to do right now is generate the e-way bill for this invoice. All I have to do is select the mode of transport as the road and enter a vehicle number, and I will be able to generate an e-invoice. An e-way bill. So now if I open the PDF, we will have both the IRN details and the e-way bill details. As you can see, we have the e-way bill number, e-way bill date till when the e-way bill is valid, and what is the vehicle number that we had entered. So this information will also be embedded into the PDF. So coming back, there is also an option to cancel the e-invoice in GST Zen by clicking the cancel e-invoice button. So the moment you hit cancel e-invoice, the e-invoice will get cancelled. Now we have the IRN number, and it says e-invoice cancelled. So this is how an e-invoice can be cancelled in GST Zen. That brings me to the end of my Excel demo. Now we will be taking a look at the API demo. So the API demo is very helpful, especially for software developers. Using GST Zen's e-invoice API, you will be able to generate e-invoices directly from any custom ERP, as long as you can make a HTTPS call from that ERP. All right. So what we are seeing now is the endpoint URL of GSTZen's e-invoice API. So we have 4 API endpoints. The first one is to generate an e-invoice. Second one is to cancel an e-invoice. Third one is to generate an e-waybill, and fourth one is to cancel an e-waybill. However, if we post the data to the first URL, that is the generate e-invoice, and if we have the e-waybill details in the payload like this, then e-invoice and e-waybill will get generated at the same time. So I'm going to show you a demo of that and what the response that GSTZen API provides looks like. So I have a document number here called webinar API 7. It's dated today. And now I'm going to call GSTZen's e-invoice API. The response that we get is status of 1, which means the request was successful and we have successfully gotten a response. And message is that IRN generated, pin-to-pin calculated distance is 1350 kilometer. Pin-to-pin calculated distance is to do with the e-waybill. The distance is automatically calculated from the ship to and the dispatch pin codes. We then have the IRN number in the response, followed by the acknowledgement details and also the e-waybill details. Since we provided e-waybill details, both IRN and e-waybill got generated, and we have both the details in the response. Scrolling down, we also have the signed QR code and the signed invoice. So now the signed QR code can be validated using GSTZen's free tool. I will quickly validate this and we will be able to see the information that we provide. So all we have to do is go to the signed QR code validator, which is a free tool that GSTZen provides. Enter the QR code and say validate signed QR code. And you can see here that it is displaying the QR code of the e-invoice, and it says issued by Sandbox portal. Now this issued by can also be found in your sales register invoice. I will just show you that here. So what that means is whether we are generating an e-invoice in the Sandbox portal or in the production portal. So that is what this issued by will tell us. So all the invoices, all the e-invoices we are generating now, we are generating that in the Sandbox portal. So using the signed QR code validator, you will be able to validate the QR code and get the details. Similarly, we also have a signed invoice validator. You can download the acknowledgement JSON from GSTZen and you will be able to validate the invoice. So this also we provide as a part of the response. And finally, we have two other very important fields here called the signed QR code image URL and invoice PDF URL. So if you are using a custom ERP and you want to incorporate the QR code image back into your ERP, back into the PDF that your ERP is generating, then this is what you need. This is exactly what you need. We provide the URL of the QR code, and just by entering our domain name, by prefixing it with our domain name, you will be able to get the QR code image. So you can download the image from this URL and embed it into the PDF that your ERP is generating. Same concept with the IRN also. We provide the IRN in the response. You can embed this into the PDF format of your ERP. The other URL that we provide is the invoice PDF URL. So like the QR code image URL, you have to append this, you have to prefix this with GSTZen domain name, and you will be able to download the complete PDF. The PDF that you see here is essentially the PDF available in your GSTZen account. Let me actually show you this invoice, this very invoice in your GSTZen sales register. Now, our sales register has an option to filter invoices based on a lot of parameters. You can see here that there's a search and filter option, and you can filter by invoice number, by the recipient, let's say, you want to view all the invoices for one particular recipient, you can always enter their GST number here and filter it. Then we also have filters by on place of supply, the type of invoices, and even you can specify a date range to filter the invoices. So this is, we have around 9 to 10 filters that you can apply to narrow down your search. Now that I have the invoice number, I'm simply going to search by the invoice number, and you will see that it shows the invoice here. Pin-to-pin calculated distance is 1,350 kilometer, which is what we received in the response. Now this PDF here is essentially the same PDF that our response is also returning. So it is one and the same. So this is how you can generate an e-invoice through GSTZen's e-invoice API. The next thing, if at all, let's say you have made a data entry mistake and you want to cancel it, all you have to do is change the URL. The body of the e-invoice remains the same. The body of the request, sorry, that remains the same. You do not have to change anything in the request body. The headers also, in fact, remain the same. All you have to change is the URL, and then you fire the request and you will get a response saying IRN cancelled. And as you can see in the response, you get a message called IRN cancelled, and this is the cancel date. All right. Now coming back, you can verify here. If I refresh the page, it will say e-invoice cancelled because I have cancelled it through API. So simply by changing the URL, you will be able to cancel an e-invoice. Please make sure that you cancel it within 24 hours. So that brings me to the end of the API demo. Now we will be looking at the billing software demo. GSTZen's new billing software allows you to create an invoice directly in your GSTZen account and then create an e-invoice as well for it. So now in order to enter the billing software, you have to open the sales register and then click create invoice. So here you will see that the billing software contains several cards. I will go through them one by one. The very first detail that we have is the document details. So here we have the document number, which is auto-populated based on the series of invoices. If your if your latest invoice is INV001, and when you open this page, it will be auto-populated with INV002. So the document date is the only field you have to set in this section, because by default, the document type and the supply type code will be set to invoice and business to business. So you can change the invoice, you can change the document type to credit note or debit note. Similarly, you can also change the supply type code based on your requirement. Reverse charge and IGST on intra are set to no by default. Of course, you will be able to change that as well. Scrolling further down, we have the supplier and recipient details. The supplier details is your details when you are creating the invoice, which will be auto-populated. All the fields except address to and location are auto-populated. They are not mandatory, so it is all right. And we have the recipient details here. So in GSTZen, there is an option to enter your customer supplier master. And when you enter your customer supplier master, all you have to do here is simply either search by the name of the company or using the GST number, and all the other details will get auto-populated. So if you perform the one-time activity of importing your customer supplier master into your GSTZen account, you will save a lot of time when you're creating invoices through our billing software. So now that we have added the supplier and recipient details, we can move on to the other sections. Here we have the ship to and the dispatch from details. Now these are optional, hence we have hidden them. If at all you want to provide the details, you can select the checkbox and you will be able to add the details similar to your recipient details. You can simply enter the GST number and we will auto-populate the other fields. Now for this invoice, I am not going to add any ship to and dispatch details. So we can go ahead to the line item details. Just give me 1 minute, please. Yeah, so coming to the line item details, You can see that we have all the mandatory fields here, such as the HSN code, the product description, what is the unit, what is the unit price, quantity, and so on. So in GST Zen, we have a product master. And if you have entered the details in your product master, you can simply select the product here and the other details will get auto-populated here. So likewise, I'm going to create another item here, and it is going to be tables. And you will see that all the information is auto-populated here. HSN code, I will just pick it up from here and I will enter it into this tab. We will, so the HSN code also has been added now. And the total item value for the first line item is 224, and for the second it is 336. Now, if you want to increase the quantity, you can simply change it here. I will make it 3 and 2, and you will see that it has changed over here as well. Finally, coming to the additional detail section, if at all you want to add any additional notes to the invoice PDF that need to be displayed, you can add it here. So I will just add a note and show you that this gets added and say this is an e-invoice. And if at all there are any payment terms, you can add the payment terms as well. Finally, we have the invoice level details. So let's say I want to provide a discount of rupees 100 on my invoice. I will simply enter it here and it will deduct it from my total amount. And if I have miscellaneous charges of rupees 300, I will enter that here and it will get added to the total amount. If at all you want to round off the total amount, you can select this and it will round off the value. For now, I'm going to keep it at its default setting. And now that I have entered all the information pertaining to the invoice, you can just cross-check it once. I am going to click on Save Invoice. When I hit Save Invoice, I get a message saying Invoice created. But please note that only an invoice has been created. We still have to generate the e-invoice. In order to do that, I will click the Review button. And I'm sure you are familiar with this page by now. This is the detailed page of the invoice. And it says e-invoice not yet generated. So I simply have to click this button that says click here to generate e-invoice. And it will generate the e-invoice for me. Now we have the IRN, the issued by, acknowledgement details, and so on. I can, of course, cancel this e-invoice from here or generate an e-way bill by clicking this button. And I can also open the PDF here and ensure that it contains the IRN and the QR code. So this is how, using GST Zen's billing software, you can create e-invoices. If you want to create a new invoice, you have to click on New Invoice button, and it will just reload the screen, and you will be able to create a fresh invoice. So that brings me to the end of my demo. Now, Venu sir will be presenting a demo of how e-invoices can be generated through Tally. Venu sir, please take over.
Thank you, Vatsa. Participants, now there are questions on how to prepare the e-invoice from Tally. Firstly, just want to know whether my voice is audible. If yes, can you just press as yes in the chat? Is my voice audible? Let me share the screen. And is my screen visible? Okay, so let me open the Tally. Okay, so here is Tally ERP 9. Now, Tally Prime has an inbuilt feature. In fact, there is a TDL which is created by GSTzen. Once you install the TDL, you will find an additional button called GSTzen. The process is same, either if it is ERP9 or it is Tally Prime, the process is same. So once you go to GSTzen, you have a B2B e-invoice where you have an e-invoice register where you can see list of invoices where the e-invoice is done. So you can see it in different color combinations. I'll explain you all in a while. The process is pretty simple, straightforward, and very beautifully done, the TDL. Let me create a sales invoice. Let me just say one sales invoice. And so I'm just creating one. Let me put the date as, in fact, some of the people have asked, what can I do a backdated invoice? Let's do that also. I will do that invoice. Today we are on 28th September. I'm raising the invoice on, let's do two invoices. One I will date it as 31st August. So I'm dating the invoice as 31st August, and some ledger I'm picking. Let's sell some item that I'm selling, and let's pick some quantity. So I'll also show you how the e-waybill works, with e-waybill, without e-waybill, and how do we generate e-invoice in bulk. We will see all the features with this. So I'm selecting my IGST. So if the tax amount is automatically calculated, it would indicate that, okay, your calculation is wrong. So if you can see here, the details of IRN acknowledgement, all this is blank. And in a while, we will be able to fill this. So I'll say test invoice 1. And let me create another invoice. Let's go to the same party, and some item I'll be selling. Let's say this I am selling with value more than 50,000. So e-waybill is also applicable. So let me show you with e-waybill, without e-waybill. And here in the e-waybill details, I'll just have to do all that you have to do for you to generate e-waybill is just you have to enter the vehicle number. You don't need to do anything else. So I'm directly coming here. I'm just entering one vehicle number, and I am saving the invoice. Now this invoice, instead of 31st August, instead of 31st August, let me make this invoice as, let's say the date, let's do as 25th September. All right, so there are two invoices that have been raised. Invoice 1, we wanted to do with e-waybill, invoice 2 without e-waybill. Now, in the organization, you might have maker checker concept. So once the data entry is done, users can go to e-invoice register, and so you can see different color combinations. Here, whatever which is in green color, it indicates that you have done e-invoice with e-waybill. Whatever which is there in the blue color, only e-invoice is done. These are two new entries which you can see in black color. This one and this one. These are two entries where we have just created and e-invoice yet to be done. I can also go to e-invoice pending. You will see only the invoices where e-invoice is pending. So let me do from 1st August to date. We have two invoices where e-invoice is pending. In fact, the way it works is I can just select all, control space bar, I can select all, and I just need to press this button called upload e-invoice. So GST then has beautifully integrated with the government portal, and e-invoice is done. The speed at which it does is, that is what Bharti has clearly said, IRP does this work in nanoseconds. The moment I press this button and say enter, the invoice gets created. So if I go to invoice register, and let me take it from 1st August, you can see this entry which we have done. This entry which we have done it is with e-way bill. We have said the 25th September is with e-way bill, so it is in green color. The 31st August invoice, which we have raised, the e-invoice got generated. Now, if people will be wondering, can I do a backdated? If you can carefully look at it, the date is 28th September 28th September 22 at 4:08. While today's date, you can see the invoice date is 31st August, but e-invoice date is today's date 28th September. This is what it is possible. Someone asked backdated. And it also is saying that the status IRN is generated, but the e-way bill status, it is not generated. Even that status is also visible here. And when you try to print this invoice, let me just print this invoice. If we print this invoice, you can see on the top of the invoice, you can see the QR code visible with the IRN and acknowledgement number. And let me show you the other invoice where we have raised the e-way bill. All that we have entered is the vehicle number. If you look at it, it has automatically calculated based on the distance. Invoice date is 28 September. It said the e-way bill valid is till 9th October 22. It has calculated based on the distance, pin to pin distance. It calculates basis the distance. It has created that e-way bill validity. When you print the invoice, and in fact, this is what Bharti also said, you don't need to print the e-way bill. You just need to print the invoice, and this QR code, when it is scanned by the officer, the e-invoice QR code, when scanned by the officer, it will automatically show that yes, okay, the vehicle is having the e-way bill, and the e-way bill number is automatically printed here. So generating e-invoice from Tally is that simple with the TDL which is given by the GST-Zen. GST-Zen TDL works both on Tally ERP9 and also Tally Prime. Any questions to the participants? Let's now, you can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, and you can talk if you have any questions. Aryan Gupta was asking the session to record. RNG, Bharti has shared the link. You can watch the session online. Pawan is asking how to generate export invoice with Excel. Pawan, in the session which what Srivatsa has shown, the Excel file, the type, transaction type, you just need to select as export. So everything will be taken care. So again, the question from Aryan, what is the cost of the GST Zen? So Vatsa, can you put up the our coordinates? Yep. So if you can reach us, we will be able to share you looking at the various number of GST registrations, number of PAN, what will be the cost. But roughly for a standard Tally integration, it is 8,250 rupees for one installation. Again, based on the number of licenses, we need to look at it, but that's the cost. How to generate e-way bill in Tally Prime? Again, Yashwant, the process is the same. You will just press a button, the GST Zen APIs will take care of generating invoice. Mahendra, can we see the demo of the Tally Prime? Mahendra, for Tally Prime, Tally ERP9, it is the same. You will have the GST Zen button. It will show list of the invoices. You just need to select the button, press e-invoice. E-invoice would be taken care of. Praveen is asking, I would like to know if we have multiple locations billing is taking place, how to generate e-way bill. Praveen, for each location where the billing is happening, your software, you will have to connect with the APIs of GST Zen. At that location where the billing is happening, both e-invoice and e-way will happen. Surinder is asking how to create an invoice for software services to customer out of the country. Surinder, this would be treated as export of services. E-invoice is applicable in your software, whether it is Tally or an Excel. You need to select this transaction as exports. Madan is asking, can we edit an e-invoice? Absolutely no. There is no question of time frame. Even once after generated, you can't even add a full stop or a comma. Not even in a second, you will be able to change. You cannot change once it is done. Aryan, what is the cancellation time of e-invoice? Let's very good question. Cancellation time of e-invoice. Bharti, for a moment, I will share my screen and let me show the cancellation. The e-invoice can be cancelled only within 24 hours. Now, we have the e-invoices which have been generated. Let's see the e-invoices which have been generated starting from August to till date. This is the invoice on 31st August, but however, it is generated today, 28th September. I'm selecting this and I'm saying cancel e-invoice. So this gets cancelled. Let's select the any next one, which is 7th September. I'm saying cancel e-invoice. And it says it cannot cancel the e-invoice because IRN has been generated more than 24 hours ago. So you cannot cancel the e-invoice. So to cancel the invoice has to be cancelled within 24 hours of generation. The earlier one I could cancel it because I have generated only now. I cannot cancel an invoice after the 24 hours. Can we generate an invoice for exports as without payment of tax? Yes, you can generate an invoice without payment of tax. Bangalore, Mysore with one single GST user ID. GST allows only one access at time. In the case of e-invoice, it doesn't matter. Multiple tallies with the same GST number. Since you are doing through API, there's no question of login. You can parallelly do the e-invoice. GST and cost is applicable even if we raise our invoice in Excel sheet and generate invoice with the registration in GST. Then yes, the standard licensing fees of GST and 8250 works. You can use your Excel or the Excel, but that's the standard the price that is applicable. Again, you can reach to us. What's are the coordinates? Can we prepare a pro forma invoice earlier? Again, this is one common question comes. See, I am going on a holiday. Can I prepare the invoices, generate it and keep it and give it to delivery team so that they can do it? No, portal doesn't allow you to generate invoice for a future date. For exports, there is a different date of invoice and dispatch. That is absolutely fine, Prabhu. Your date of invoice and the date of dispatch can be different. Absolutely no issue. Even domestic also, you will be generating an invoice today. You may deliver the material at a later date. That is permitted, no issues. Cancelled invoice is necessary to regenerate or leave as it is. Madan and everyone, once the invoice is cancelled, the invoice number cannot be reused. So once an invoice is cancelled, it means that invoice is used. You cannot use that number. In table 13 of GSTR1, you have to report how many number of invoices that have been cancelled. Is it mandatory to share e-invoice with the client? Ganesh, yes. Rule 48 sub rule 5 says if you are issuing any document other than e-invoice, it is not a valid document. Aryan is asking, can we leave bill numbers in between? There's no question of leaving bill numbers in between. Rule 46 asks you to have invoices serially numbered. In between, and invoices can be cancelled. No worries. Like I have used invoice number 1, 2, 3. After that, invoice 4 is cancelled, then invoice 5 is used. Perfectly fine, valid as per the law. Can a credit note for the cancelled invoice be issued beyond 24 hours? Yes, Jyotsna, the credit note, again, there is no time limit for the purpose of e-invoice. You will be going by section 34, where the credit note should be issued by September of the next financial year. Then you can generate a e-invoice. So there is no linkage of original invoice to the credit note. So there is no time limit that would be applicable. How many days delay a dispatch can be done? Bipin, whatever is the practical things, because today you have raised invoice, but you are waiting for some more material to be coming, or you can't send the cargo, the container only for one load. So you will accumulate, say, 2-3 days and send it. Anything a reasonable, acceptable practice that is permitted. You need to ensure you are not violating section 122, wherein you're doing a fake invoicing without supply of goods, as long as you can fulfill that condition, that is permitted. Sir, we don't see option in Tally Prime for e-invoice. Please share, do the demo of the Tally Prime. Pandirajan sir, what I have shown the demo is the add-on which you will be using GST Zen TDL. So the GST Zen will provide this add-on. Using the add-on, the e-invoice has been done. Again, people are asking e-invoice in Tally Prime. Tally Prime has its own thing. What we are having is an add-on feature to the regular Tally ERP 9 and Prime. Will it impact if I raise an e-invoice of the previous month in the current month? Absolutely no issue, Ganesh. It will not have any impact. GST is payable for the month on the basis once the GST invoice is generated and not the tax invoice. Elizabeth, I didn't understand your question well. Your reporting of the value of the GSTR1, the recently section 75 subsection 10 is amended, saying that whatever you report in GSTR1, that would be your liability, whether or not you have discharged it in 3B. So reporting of turnover in GSTR1 would be matter. All right. Any other questions? Renu Gupta, you have unmuted yourself. Do you have any question to ask? I guess we have answered all or most of the questions. In case if some of the questions are not answered and you still get a question at a later point, feel free to write back to us. Like there are questions, Pandirajan, I would request you to connect back to us on the support email ID. Our team will get back on incorporating the GST Zen TDL. In fact, anyone who wants to have an add-on to the Tally, please write to the support. The support will help you in onboarding to the GST Zen TDL, and they will do the installation. Prabhu, can we get the recorded video? Yes, we are live, so you can always come and watch back this session later. Is different date for e-invoice e-way bill in Tally valid, permitted? Today you will be doing e-invoices, tomorrow you will be doing e-way bill. That is permitted, no issue. All right. So we have come to end of the session. Thank you, participants, for joining today and watching the session. From 1st October, e-invoice is applicable. So make sure you get ready and do the e-invoice by then. If you're not doing the e-invoice, you will have a general penalty of 25 CGST as GST under section 122. More than that, your recipient may curse you because the proper officer for recipient may say that I will not allow the input tax credit. So they may take a declaration from you stating that e-invoice is not applicable to you, hence you are not doing e-invoice. Rather than giving a wrong declaration, it is better you comply with the provisions of the law. Below 10 crores voluntary e-invoice enrollment is not there, and we have to wait and see. Maybe for next April, maybe it will be for 5 crores. Yeah. On this note, both Srivatsa and Bharti, thank you for putting up the session beautifully.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. We will be ending the webinar here. The coordinates on the screen. I will be adding the message again in the chat. If at all you require any assistance with getting started with e-invoicing, please do reach out to our email ID or our phone number. Thank you.